Well, Cindy, I so appreciate you joining me. The topic today is the Shroud of Turin. This is one of those topics that people for decades and beyond have been very, very, very interested in for a variety of reasons. For those who don't know, because there are people out there who the Shroud may be new to them, although it's gotten a lot of attention over the years. What is the Shroud? Tell us a little bit about the backstory of what it is believed to be.
Well, to your point, it's astounding to me how many people don't know about the shroud, have maybe vaguely heard about the shroud, but they're like, well, wasn't that proved to be a fake? They have a complete misconception about the Shroud of Turin. But what the Shroud of Turin is a 14 by 3 foot cloth that bears the image of a scourged, crucified, appears to be Jewish man, front and back, with real blood, real, it looks like a scorch mark. And it's believed to be the actual burial cloth of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and this has sparked all sorts of studies and debate and discussion over the years. And you are heavily involved in helping organize an event. It's the 2025 International Conference and Symposium on the Shroud. Talk a little bit about this event, when it is, and what people can expect from it.
Okay, well, the conference takes place July 30th through August the 3rd. Um, this year, 2025, at the Augustine Institute in St. Louis. And we have over 40 speakers lined up, and these are world renowned shroud experts coming from around the world to speak about the latest findings on the Shroud of Turin. This is the most studied artifact in world history. And so it's all of these scientists and all these experts, all these authors, researchers are going to convene to talk about the Shroud of Turin and why they believe it to be authentic.
How did you get involved in this? What take us through your history on this? Because I think like so many other people, you were intrigued about this, and now here you are helping make this massive event that you just described happen.
Well, I've been intrigued with the Shroud since I learned of it in the 1970s, and just kept following all the latest findings and things like that. And um, I used to tell my kids, someday science will catch up with this shroud, but it may not be in my lifetime. Well, wonderfully, more and more and more science is catching up to the shroud. I don't know that they'll ever fully be able to say they have absolute proof that this is the burial shroud of Jesus, simply because we have no other resurrections to compare it to. I mean, there's nothing like it on the planet. But how I got involved with the Shroud people is kind of interesting. There is a website called shroud.com that's considered to be the definitive um, website on all Shroud information. And I was kind of, perusing that site in 2013. And for the first time, I noticed that the proprietor of the site was a Jewish fellow named Barry Schwartz. And I have to tell you, I was totally impressed that a Jewish guy was one of the world's experts on the Shroud of Turin. So I wrote him and I said, I just have to tell you, I'm impressed that you, being a Jew, are one of the staunchest proponents of the Shroud. I said, heaven must have a special place for you. And I didn't really expect a response, but he sent the nicest letter back saying, I find it one of the great ironies of my life that I, being a Jew, have to go around convincing Christians of the shroud's authenticity. He said, I also find it indicative of God's great sense of humor that whenever he has an important message to send, he sends a Jew. And so we sort of became friends and we started corresponding. And then he asked me, he invited me actually to the 2014 Shroud Conference that was taking place in St. Louis. And I said, well, can the riffraff come? Because I'm no expert. I haven't written any books. I'm no researcher. I'm just somebody with a really strong interest. And he said, I'm inviting you, you come. And that's where I got to meet Barry. I got to meet Joe Marino, Mark Antonacci, so many of the experts on the shroud that are my friends to this day. And so then since then I attended two other shroud conferences. One that Bob Rucker, the nuclear engineer, put on in Pasco, Washington. And then there was another one just prior to the pandemic up in Ancaster, Canada. So it's near to Toronto. And so 2 years ago, after the pandemic, I said to my friend Joe Marino, Joe, we haven't had a shroud conference since prior to the pandemic. I think it's time for another one. Do you want to partner with me on this? And he said, I just had the same thought this very week. He said, let's do it.
Wow.
And so actually it's almost, by the time we have this conference, it'll be almost 2 years in the making.
Wow. And, I would imagine all these experts coming together, it's a real opportunity to hear the latest research and information. Give us a preview based on what you're seeing in the research, because a lot of people out there are still naysayers. They'll say it's not true, it's somebody else. The image was intentionally made somehow. What does the most recent research tell us about the shroud?
Well, the one anomalous test was a carbon dating test that took place in 1988. And it dated this tiny little piece of the corner of the cloth back to the medieval ages. And the British Museum and those who made the proclamation that this was a medieval production of some sort did the entire world such a disservice because they pronounced it was, a medieval forgery or a fake, and that's all the world heard. The whole world dismissed it summarily because of that proclamation. Well, we've come to find out that there are any number of reasons, and I will say the scientists were like I was, but wait a minute, how do we explain that image then? How do we explain real blood, real serum? How do we explain that this is what people don't know? The scorched image on the cloth, or appears to be scorched, is a photographic negative of a scourged crucified man. In other words, it wasn't until photography came to be in 1898 and Secundo Pia took the first photograph of it that we found out that it was a photographic negative. It was created before the advent of photography. And then subsequent testing has found that it has holographic qualities, X-ray qualities, 3D qualities. There is no other cloth like it on the planet. So it kept intriguing the scientist. And so finally, a couple things happened that have brought the shroud back into the zeitgeist of thinkers, of true thinkers. Thing one, Tristan Casabianca, a French researcher on the shroud, kept challenging the British Museum to release the data on that carbon dating. They had never done it. They had held it for 30 years and would not release the raw data that pertained to that carbon dating. In 2017, he finally got that released. And it turns out that there was a lot that was not according to protocol that took place with that carbon dating. So it was faulty carbon dating to begin with. The other thing that has come up is 2 years ago, it was determined by a new process called wide angle X-ray scattering that the cloth does date back 2,000 years. So that's sort of opened the floodgates of modern investigation. And people are going, whoa, whoa. If the carbon dating was wrong and this new technique dates it back 2,000 years, maybe we need to look at this again. So that's why everybody's so excited to come to this conference, because we're going to hear the latest findings.
How confident are you? How confident are you that this is Jesus's burial cloth?
Well, myself personally, I have absolutely no doubt. Absolutely no doubt, because it is impossible to create the cloth today using modern technology. They don't know exactly how the image got on there. It's a process unknown to man. Some of the scientists have said this is a form of physics unknown to man. So, how could somebody have faked this cloth? And so to me, the evidence speaks for itself. And that's all I would say is that the preponderance of evidence, as they would say in a court of law, certainly does indicate that this couldn't be anything else.
When it comes to the conference, the International Conference and Symposium, what are you hoping people take away from that? Those who might attend it, who might somehow be able to consume some of the information that will be presented there.
Well, we, for the first time, are having well, actually, going to be three tracks, two academic tracks, and then a what we call a Meet the Shroud track. So what we're doing is we're opening this up to the public. Usually this conference is an academic conference, and all we have are researchers and experts and authors and people who've been studying the shroud talking amongst themselves. This time we're opening it up to the public to come and see for themselves. And so my hope is that people who have vaguely heard about the shroud, maybe have some interest, don't know much about it. You would be amazed, Billy, at how many of these shroud experts started out as atheists, agnostics, or skeptics. In fact, we're having a panel of former agnostics and skeptics that are going to talk about how the shroud was a game changer for them. Because in every case, it was the shroud that brought them to faith. And so that's my
Wow.
hope. We reach out to, yeah, that we reach out to, we're a game changer for some people, that maybe they open their minds and they look at that and think, well, whoa, maybe I was wrong about this, or maybe this, if this is think of how, if this is indeed what I think it is, it provides absolute proof of the historical Jesus. Some people even doubt that. Oh, we don't have much proof that there was a real Jesus. Well, this provides photographic proof. Some would say the first photograph, the first selfie. Okay, then it provides also proof that the crucifixion took place exactly as depicted and then some, because they have actually learned about the crucifixion from studying this cloth. For one example, you know how you always see a picture of Jesus and the portraits show this little wreathlet around his head of a crown of thorns? Well, according to the shroud, this was not a wreathlet. It was a clump. It was a cap that they pounded into his head, and they found out that the nails went through the wrist and not the palms. And they know that it was a Roman flagrum that was used. They know there were two Romans, one taller than the other, alternating whiplashes with that Roman flagrum. They've learned all of this from just studying the shroud and then some. And then finally, we have absolute overwhelming evidence that the resurrection did indeed take place within 3 days of the death of the man in the shroud, because there is no decomposition on the body. So we are going to have medical experts at our conference talking about the medical evidence on the shroud that points to the fact that this has to be a scourged, crucified man. So I just think it's endlessly fascinating.
Well, it is. And I think this is why there have been so many specials on it and films on it. And I think it's one of
Yep.
those things that captures so many people's attention for the reasons you detailed. I mean, if this truly is the
Mm-hmm.
shroud,
Mm-hmm.
it proves everything true, right? Now you can know those things by
Absolutely.
faith, but it's a practicality. You can no longer deny it. It is interesting that you have all these people who it's been an evangelistic tool for them, that they've come to faith as a result of experiencing the story behind the shroud, right? That's really interesting.
And that's our hope. That's the whole point of having this conference. Not only for them to share amongst themselves the latest research and findings, but also to reach out to, men and with this message, because some people go so far as to call the shroud the fifth gospel. You have Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and then you have the evidence, the fifth gospel. And so that's why it's so important that people know about it and can see for themselves. We won't have the real shroud there, obviously. It's held in Turin, Italy. I was blessed to go see it twice when it was on display. But what we do have is a very, very realistic replica of the shroud that you'll be able to take a look at that and see that. And then we have three talks on the Sudarium of Oviedo, which I don't know if a lot of people know about that, but it's believed to be the head napkin that is mentioned in scripture that they say was folded and laid to the side and it was found by Peter and John when they went to the tomb. The head napkin is called the Sudarium of Oviedo. It's called that because it's held in Oviedo, Spain. That's where it is now to this day. And the blood pattern and the blood type exactly match the pattern and the type on the shroud. It does not have an image on it because it was laid aside before Jesus resurrected. But the dating of the cloth, the blood and the type all match. So it is believed to be the napkin mentioned in scriptures. I hear a lot of people say this can't be it because it's supposed to have a napkin with it. Well, there is a napkin, the Sudarium of Oviedo, or a
Wow.
head cloth. Yeah.
Really, this is such a fascinating conversation. Now, if people want to go to the conference and the symposium, where can they go to find out more information?
Okay, go to shroud2025conference.com. And let me tell you that the full conference itself is practically sold out. Actually, it was sold out, but we opened up a few more spaces so a few more people can get in. But what we are doing is, as I told you before, we've got a track that's called Meet the Shroud Day Passes. And so you can come just for a day, pick a day, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. Your lunch is provided. Oh, and I didn't even mention, we have an exhibit that we're bringing that was featured at the National Eucharistic Congress earlier this year. And there were lines all the way around for the duration of the conference for this particular exhibit that is put on by Athonia. And Jonathan Rumi of The Chosen was there and requested a special private viewing of this particular exhibit because he was about to film the crucifixion. And so he wanted to be able to study the crucifixion pattern and everything that happened to Jesus by going through this exhibit. So we have that very same exhibit that's going to be here. And anybody who gets either a day pass or a full pass has access to this exhibit. And so that's what we're kind of hoping that people will have enough interest to purchase a day pass and come for the day and hear. There's still world-renowned experts that are talking about the shroud Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and your lunch is provided.
Well, I so appreciate you taking the time today and joining us. And again, people can check it out and check out that one day conference. That sounds fascinating. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Billy. Appreciate your talking with us, and I hope you'll. I would love for you to be there, but I don't know what if your schedule permits. But at any rate, thank you.
Well, thank you. I so appreciate it.